Greece was supposed to be a distraction, a temporary escape from the life I had slowly suffocated in back home. The breakup, the job I had grown to hate, the feeling that I was slipping into a life I never chose. I wanted clarity. Or at least silence. Instead, what I found was chaos. Beautiful chaos. The harbor market was alive with noise, tourists bargaining, fishermen yelling about fresh catches, music echoing from somewhere I couldn't see. It felt like the world here was awake in ways I wasn't. I kept reminding myself, you're alone by choice. You needed this. But loneliness doesn't disappear just because you buy a plane ticket. I was halfway through a melting gelato, wandering without purpose, when I noticed him. He stood out instantly. Not because he tried to, more like he struggled not to be noticed. Lean against a stone wall in the shade, eyes shifting like he was searching for exits or threats rather than scenery. His dark hair curled slightly over his forehead, sun painting warm highlights through it. His skin looked kissed by the ocean and the sun, like he belonged to the coast itself. But it was his eyes, those eyes that caught me. A storm, trapped behind a quiet, careful smile. He noticed me looking and straightened like he'd been caught doing something wrong. I looked away, cheeks warming, pretending my gelato was the most interesting thing in Greece. "Vanilla?" a voice asked. I turned. It was him. His accent was soft, Greek, but almost polished out of him. Like someone forced him to lose parts of himself. Yeah, I answered, instantly regretting my entire personality. He nodded toward the gelato. "Bold choice," he said with almost a smirk. I laughed because it felt like the correct response. He smiled, or tried to. It looked like his face didn't remember how. "I'm Anna," I said, pushing confidence into my voice. He hesitated. "Jacob." Not a Greek name. Not a comfortable introduction. We started walking along the harbor together, wordlessly at first. I didn't question why. My heart was grateful for the company. "So, do you live here?" I asked. His jaw clenched so subtly I would have missed it if I wasn't studying him like a fortune teller reading palms. "Sort of," he answered. "People don't sort of live somewhere." "You're a tourist?" I pushed gently. He glanced over his shoulder before speaking. "Just passing through." Then he changed the subject so fast it gave me emotional whiplash. "What brings you here, Anna?" "A break," I said. "From everything." He nodded like he understood too well. "Breaks are dangerous," he murmured. "What does that mean?" I asked, laughing breathlessly, but he didn't laugh with me. "It means sometimes the things you run from," he said, lowering his voice, catch up. Before I could ask more, a group of men walked past, dressed too nicely, too coordinated. One of them brushed Jacob's arm, accidentally, and Jacob winced, like even the touch hurt. The man gave him a sharp look. Warning. Ownership. Jacob stepped slightly closer to me, eyes down, posture tight. Not scared, trained. When the men disappeared into the crowd, Jacob let out the smallest breath. "I should go," he said quickly. A cold emptiness dropped into my stomach. "Wait, did I say something wrong?" "No. You said everything right," he replied with a sad, almost smile. "That's the problem." He turned to leave. I took a step after him. "Jacob." He looked back, and his eyes pleaded, "Don't make this harder." Then he was swallowed by the market crowd. I stood frozen in the middle of paradise, heart pounding for a stranger who looked like he had been running his whole life. And I knew, with a certainty that scared me, that I wasn't done with him yet. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jacob's expression, the fear he tried so hard to hide behind ordinary smiles and casual conversation. His voice echoed in my head. "Breaks are dangerous." What did that even mean? The next morning, the sun was bright and cruel, like it refused to let mysteries hide in shadows. I tried to convince myself that our brief encounter was just that brief. A moment. A flicker. Something not meant to matter. But nothing in my body believed that. So I returned to the harbor. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe hope. But I found myself scanning every shaded corner, every alley, every passerby. Because part of me knew he would come back to the places he felt seen, even if he never wanted to be. And there he was. Sitting alone on a seawall, staring at the horizon so intently he didn't notice me approaching. The waves crashed against the rocks beneath him, but his body remained perfectly still, stiff, like he was waiting to be told when he was allowed to move. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat beside him, close enough to make a point, far enough not to scare him away. Finally, he looked at me, and something inside him softened. "You came back," he whispered. "You left first," I countered, trying to make the moment light. His lips twitched, but the smile didn't fully form. He looked tired, not just physically, but soul-tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from years of trying to survive something no one else knows you're trapped in. "You shouldn't be near me," he said quietly. "It's not safe." "I don't feel unsafe," I replied. "That's what worries me." I should have listened to the warning there. But instead, I focused on the quiver in his voice, on the way his hand gripped the edge of the seawall like he needed something solid to hold on to. "Let me buy you coffee," I said. His eyes widened slightly, suspicion and longing battling. Longing won. We sat outside a little cafe overlooking the water. He kept his back against the wall, eyes flicking over every person passing by. I noticed how his fingers shook slightly as he lifted the cup, and how he hid it by wrapping both hands around it like he was cold. "Where are you from?" I asked gently. Another hesitation. Another dodge. "Somewhere far," he murmured. I raised a brow. "Do you ever give real answers?" "Only when they won't get someone hurt." The words struck me. He spoke them like a truth he lived every day. "Jacob," I said, leaning forward, "are you in trouble?" He looked at me, really looked, like he was trying to decide whether I was a danger or a lifeline. Then his hand stretched across the table, almost like he didn't realize he was reaching until our fingers brushed. "We shouldn't do this," he breathed. "Do what?" "Feel something." My heart kicked hard in my chest. A moment later, the atmosphere snapped like a rubber band pulled too tight. Heavy footsteps stomped behind us, the same well-dressed men from yesterday. Jacob's entire body tensed. His chair scraped the ground as he stood abruptly. The tallest man leaned down and murmured something in Greek, sharp, threatening. Jacob nodded quickly, eyes on the ground. And before I could blink, the man grabbed him by the arm, not a friend's touch, a handler's. A warning disguised as familiarity. Jacob looked at me with terror buried beneath a forced smile. "Don't follow me." Then they dragged him away. I stood there, breath trapped somewhere between fear and fury, watching the person I barely knew and already cared about disappear into the crowd again. My coffee had barely cooled, but it felt like the world around me had suddenly gone ice cold. That very night, I packed a small backpack with everything I couldn't afford to lose: passport, charger, some cash tucked into my sock, and the Polaroid Jacob took of me at the waterfall, the one where he said I looked like a woman in a painting. I slid the photo into the inner pocket of my jacket and placed my hand over it, as if to tell him silently, "I'm coming for you." I tucked my hair under a cap, pulled the hood low, and walked out into the cold Rome night, heart thundering against my ribs. I had always heard that fear sharpens instincts. Right then, mine felt like steel. Every corner, every footstep behind me, I noticed everything. The plan was simple: go to the train station, ask about the high-security cargo train for foreign workers, and bribe whoever I had to. But simple looked different when my legs trembled and every security guard's eyes felt like knives. Inside the station, harsh white lights bleached the color out of life. Voices echoed in Italian, some rushed, some tired. I scanned the platforms, pretending to be casual while my brain screamed, "You are absolutely insane." Then steel doors, chained, 2 guards standing stiff as statues. I drifted closer, trying to look lost. One of the guards glared at me. "Signora, this area, restricted." I'm supposed to meet someone." My voice shook. "My boyfriend. He was taken here by mistake." They exchanged a look, one that sent a pit dropping through my stomach. "You should go home," the younger one muttered, not unkindly. "This is not a place for you." "Please," I whispered. "They took him. I don't know where. I need to find him." The older guard stepped forward, face like stone. "You don't know what you are asking. Go, before someone less kind notices you." I backed away, throat burning, tears threatening. But then I heard it. A cough, hoarse, familiar, from behind the metal doors. My heart stopped. I recognized it instantly. Jacob had that little rasp in his throat when he laughed too much or breathed cold air too long. I moved without thinking, sprinting toward the sound. "Jacob," I shouted. The guards lunged, grabbing my arms. I fought like a woman possessed, nails, teeth, anything. "Let me go." And just before one of them pinned my wrists behind my back, I saw him. Through a narrow gap in the steel plates, eyes wide, terrified, and then his lips shaped my name. Anna. The world crashed into slow motion. His face bruised. His hands cuffed. His fear real. "Jacob," I screamed. A rough hand covered my mouth, dragging me backwards. "You shouldn't have come here," the older guard hissed, voice low and dark. "Now they will not let either of you leave." The darkness behind the sealed doors swallowed Jacob again, and the metal clanged like a final heartbeat. But they didn't know one thing about me. I would burn the whole city down before I let them keep him. My lungs burned from the scrape of metal and the cold air, but they burned harder from something else, a hot, furious need that made my hands unclench even as the guards hauled me back like I was baggage. They escorted me out of the station and shoved me against a wall, watching me with the kind of calm cruelty that says they enjoy making someone small. "You will leave this city and never return," the older guard said. His breath smelled of cheap tobacco and menace. "Or next time we will not be so gentle." "Where is he?" I demanded, voice raw. "Where is Jacob?" The younger guard shrugged like he shrugged off flies. "He belongs to people who know how to keep what is theirs. You should go. Now." They pushed me toward the square where street lamps hummed and the night air smelled of frying oil and seawater. I stumbled into the light and, for a moment, let myself collapse against a bench. The Polaroid trembled in my inner pocket like a heart still beating. I should have left. I should have turned around, gone back to the hostel, booked the first flight home, and pretended I had never met a man with stormy eyes who smelled of salt and danger. But my feet refused to obey the sensible voice inside my head. Instead, I walked until the city blurred, until my cap was soaked with sweat and the Polaroid threatened to slip from my pocket. I walked until I reached the narrow alley where Jacob had first disappeared into the market crowd, heart pounding like a drum. He wasn't there. For 2 nights I tried to sleep, but the city offered no mercy. I kept imagining worse and worse things: chains, cold rooms, shadows that would speak his name only to laugh. I wanted to scream until my throat bled, until someone heard me and could no longer pretend not to. On the second night, when the moon was a thin fingernail and the sea whispered against the harbor, there was a soft knock at my window. I nearly choked on my own hope. I crept to the sill and peeled back the cheap curtain. There he was, Jacob, crouched on the fire escape like some modern-day phantom. His clothes were darker, damp, as if he had been running. Bruises shadowed his jaw. One corner of his lip was split. He looked smaller under the moonlight, like a bird that had been plucked clean. "Anna," he breathed. I opened the window before my brain could tell me not to. He crawled inside as if the room were the safest place on earth, then slammed and latched the window with hands that trembled. We stood there, 2 broken people under fluorescent hostel light, and for a wild second it felt like the world had condensed to just us and the danger outside that threatened to spill in and swallow us whole. "Don't look for me," he said immediately, voice raw. There was no preamble, no small talk, just that blunt order. His eyes were frantic. "Please. I'm begging you. Don't tell me what to do," I answered, though my voice sounded like a child's. "You were chained. I saw you. I saw them take you. I will not just." He put a rough hand over my mouth, not violently, but with the desperate gentleness of someone afraid his words would ruin us both. "They see everything. They watch who speaks to who, where you go. If they see you looking for me, they will hurt you or worse." Something cold slithered down my spine. "Who are they?" His laugh was a short, bitter sound. "People with money. People who traffic bodies like cargo, foreign boys, local girls. Men who buy silence with smiles and expensive gifts." The room tilted. My mind threw up images too grotesque to hold. You were trafficked?" He nodded. "I was taken when I was 16. They sell people across borders. They have lawyers, bribes. The police who could help either turn a blind eye or work for them. I've tried to leave. Every time I did, they found me. They punish those who run. Why didn't you tell me? My throat tightened. Why did you lie? He reached for my hand and I let him. His fingers were calloused and cold. Because telling you would put you in the line of fire. Because I thought I could protect you by pretending I had nothing in my past. Because I wanted to be normal around you. Because I wanted to taste something like freedom without dragging you into my mess. His eyes gleamed wetly. I tried leaving once. They took my friend. I thought I'd die looking for him. The room felt small and the air thin. I wanted to scream for justice, for some moral force to swoop in and right the wrong. I wanted to pick up the phone and call anyone with a title that felt powerful enough to help. But Jacob's face in the dim light told me why that would be useless. His story was wrapped in a web of silence and fear so thick even the law hadn't cut through it. So run, I said, because what else can you do when the helplessness is choking you? Leave the country. Get on a plane tonight. I will. He shook his head hard. They have people everywhere. They will find me at the airport. They control the routes. There are bribes, men who watch passport control, men who hold grudges. His hand found my face, thumb stroking my cheek like he was memorizing me. I want to go with you, he whispered. I want to live free. But I can't drag you into their crossfire. I considered walking out into the night with him, taking my chances. The logical part of my brain, the one that had survived breakups and bad jobs, screamed don't. But the part of me that had been hollow for years, the one that had come to Greece to feel something real, answered in a whisper, I'm not leaving without him. Jacob's voice was small when he said, if you stay, you'll be safer pretending you never met me. And if I go? I demanded. Then they'll watch you and use you to find me, he said. I can't ask that of you. We stood there in the hush, two silhouettes against a city that refused to sleep. Outside, distant music pulsed like a heart. Inside, the decision loomed like a cliff. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached up and kissed him. It was not cinematic. It tasted of metal and fear and something like salvation. He kissed me back like a man desperate for oxygen. For a heartbeat, maybe two, I believed we could outrun them. Then his hands tightened as if in pain. He pulled back, forehead pressed to mine. Please, he said, voice breaking. Promise me you'll be careful. If they see either of us reckless, they'll make an example. I nodded, though the word felt small against what we faced. I promise, I said. But promises are fragile things to hang on when the night is full of predators, and mine felt like straw in my mouth. Jacob paced the room like a trapped animal, every shadow turning him tense. He scanned the corners, the window latch, the hallway door as if expecting monsters to materialize from the plaster. They'll notice I'm gone soon, he whispered. I can't stay long. His words cut sharper than any knife. The thought of him slipping away again, back into chains, back into the hands of men who believed they owned him, made my stomach twist. What if we meet somewhere? I asked. Somewhere crowded. Somewhere they can't grab you easily. He hesitated. There's a place by the harbor. A cafe with blue lanterns. If you must see me again, and you shouldn't, go there 2 nights from now at dusk. I'll come if I can. I swallowed the fear. I'll be there. He brushed his fingers along my jaw, memorizing the shape of me like it hurt to let go. Then he crawled back onto the fire escape, paused, and looked over his shoulder. Don't trust anyone, he said. Not police. Not strangers. Not even people who seem kind. Everyone here answers to someone. The window shut between us with a soft click. I pressed my palm to the cold glass and watched as he disappeared into the night. The next day I wandered the city pretending to be a tourist, sunglasses hiding sleepless eyes, a camera I didn't use hanging around my neck. Every reflection became a suspect. Every passerby might have been the ones who chained him. I caught 2 men watching me near the market, one with a scar slashing his eyebrow, the other with cheap sunglasses that clung to his face even in shade. When I changed direction, they did too. My heart beat time with the sound of my footsteps. I ducked into a crowded shop filled with postcards and tiny ceramic boats. The clerk smiled too brightly. English? She asked. I nodded but didn't speak. The scarred man passed the window, gaze raking through the store like a searchlight. I held my breath until he moved on. I needed help, real help, but the idea of going to the authorities made me sick. Jacob's fear was still in my bones, and it kept whispering, "They're in on it." I couldn't go home. I couldn't stay still. I clung to one thin thread, the harbor cafe. By dusk the sky was a watercolor bleeding into the sea. Blue lanterns flickered outside a handful of tables, casting ripples of light across the pavement. The smell of grilled fish and lemon drifted from the kitchen. I chose a seat facing the street, where I could see danger coming. Minutes stretched like torture. I counted them with the tremor of my fingers against the table. A server brought me a glass of water I didn't touch. Then I saw him. Jacob slipped through the crowd like a shadow that had grown tired of hiding. But tonight he was worse, limping, favoring his right side, one sleeve torn. I stood so fast my chair screeched. "What happened?" I whispered as he slid into the seat opposite me. "They found out I talked to someone. They didn't know who yet." His voice was flat with exhaustion. "If they find out it was you." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I reached for his hand under the table. It felt colder, thinner, like pieces of him were slipping away. "We have to leave," I said. "Tonight. We can find a boat, a ferry, anything." "Anna," he squeezed his eyes shut. "They would kill the people who helped us. And anyone who saw. They own too much. They punish hope." His words were a hammer. My chest felt like cracked glass. But then he took a breath and something shifted in his gaze. "Unless," his lips trembled. "Unless we find someone they fear. Someone above them." Hope flickered, small but stubborn. "Do you know someone like that?" I asked. He nodded once. "A woman. She used to be one of them until she turned. She helped a few escape. She knows their routes, their secrets." Another painful wince. "But she vanished months ago. If she's still alive, she might help us." "Then we find her," I said, without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Before he could respond, the lantern light swayed, a breeze or maybe just the city shifting into a darker mood, and that was when I saw them. Two silhouettes watching from across the street. Sunglasses guy. Scar eyebrow. They'd found us. Jacob went rigid. "Don't look. Finish your water. Stand up. Walk to the bathrooms. The back door leads to the docks. I'll go the opposite way." "No," my voice cracked. "We leave together. If we leave together, we're dead together." His grip on my hand tightened like a final goodbye. "You promised you'd be careful." I didn't want to, but I nodded. I stood, legs shaking, and walked toward the restroom entrance. My last glimpse of him, Jacob sitting still as prey pretending not to sense the predators closing in, made my throat burn with helpless rage. The hallway stretched dark and empty. I pushed the back door open and the night air slapped me with salt and panic. I ran. But before I rounded the corner, a voice hissed my name, sharp, low, urgent. "Anna." I turned, heart dropping. Sunglasses guy. Behind him, Scar eyebrow stepped out of the shadows, blocking the only exit. "Well," he said, lips curling into a smile that held no humanity. "Looks like we found the little bird he's been protecting." My scream lodged in my throat. Everything went black. I woke to the sound of water dripping. Drip, drip, drip. The smell hit next, mold, sweat, fear. A heavy metallic tang that flooded my mouth at the first breath. My wrists hurt. My ankles too. When I tried to move, the rattle of chains answered before my body did. I wasn't in a room. I was in a basement. A tiny barred window high on the wall spat in a thread of light, just enough for me to see the damp concrete and rusted bolts holding me like a trapped animal. My pulse hammered against the restraints. Footsteps scraped above. Voices. Laughter. Men. The memory crashed back. The alley, the faces, the hand grabbing me from behind. Jacob. My panic sharpened to a blade. They must have him too. The door screeched open. A figure entered, Scar eyebrow. A cigarette dangled from his lips and the smoke curled like a serpent around his face. "You should have left when you were told," he said, voice rough with amusement. "But love makes fools of smart girls, no?" I glared at him, even as tears blurred the world. "Where is he?" "Alive," he said with a careless shrug. "For now. He's valuable." "You." He licked his chipped front tooth. Not so much. I refused to flinch. Another man stepped into view, one I hadn't seen before. Cleaner clothes. Silver watch. Eyes cold enough to make hell freeze. A tourist with big feelings, he observed, his accent sharp and cutting. You interfere in business you don't understand. He crouched so close I smelled expensive cologne under the rod of the room. What did Jacob tell you? He asked quietly. My heart pounded so loud I wondered if he could hear it. Nothing. Wrong answer. The man nodded once. Scar eyebrow grabbed a fistful of my hair so hard stars exploded across my vision. My head snapped back and the concrete bit into my spine. She lies, Scar growled. Yes, the boss replied mildly. But everyone lies when afraid. He stood and flicked his hand like a king bored of entertainment. Bring him. My blood froze. They dragged Jacob in, but he wasn't the Jacob I knew. His face was swollen, blood smeared across his cheek and neck. His shoulder hung wrong, dislocated, maybe worse. His eyes met mine through a haze of pain and guilt so heavy it nearly broke me. Anna, he rasped. I'm sorry. Quiet, the boss said, striking him hard across the jaw. Jacob hit the floor with a choked sound. I screamed his name, voice shredding, but Scar shoved a rag between my teeth, cutting my panic into muffled sobs. Jacob has been a loyal investment, the boss said. Then you happened. And he forgot his place. The word investment made bile rise in my throat. The boss turned his cold gaze to me. Girls like you get to choose your value. He leaned in. Tell me what he told you. Who he's spoken to. Who knows about us now? Jacob wheezed a breath. She knows nothing. I didn't. The boss slammed a boot onto Jacob's dislocated shoulder. Jacob screamed. I fought the chains until my wrists burned raw. The rag soaked with terrified saliva. My vision tunneled. The boss smiled, satisfied. You see? The boy is motivated. Hurt him again, and perhaps he'll remember his priorities. He stood over me. Talk. Or I will let him scream until morning. I stared into Jacob's eyes, those beautiful eyes now drowning in agony. He shook his head just enough for me to see. Don't. I swallowed my terror. And I spit the rag onto the floor. Do whatever you want to me, I said, voice trembling but unbroken. I won't help you hurt him. It was the stupidest, bravest thing I had ever done. The boss exhaled a disappointed sigh. Love, he said simply. It makes even the strong so weak. He nodded at Scar. Scar stepped forward. His boot crushed down on Jacob's wrist. A sickening crack. A howl that tore through me like razor wire. I sobbed. Begged. Screamed his name. But they didn't stop. Not until the boss lifted a hand. Then silence, except for Jacob hyperventilating on the ground, his pain filling the air like gasoline ready to ignite. The boss turned back to me. I will come again in an hour, he said. Perhaps then you will be more cooperative. They dragged Jacob away, leaving a smear of blood on the concrete, a red path my eyes couldn't stop following, even after the door slammed and the lock clanged shut. I was alone. Breathing felt impossible. My chest heaved in broken gasps. My wrists bled into the cuffs. I pressed my forehead to the cold wall and let the tears fall until exhaustion drowned them. Then, through the suffocating panic, I heard it. A whisper. Weak. Pained. Anna. I turned, and there he was. Still here. Just behind the metal bars separating our one misery from another. Shackled to a post, but alive. He looked at me with eyes full of ruin, and a spark of defiance the darkness hadn't yet crushed. We will get out, he whispered, voice cracking. I swear it. I believed him. Because if I didn't, then we were already dead. Jacob's breath hitched against the bars. For a long moment we just sat in the stale air, two ragged silhouettes breathing the same poisonous room. Outside, distant boots and the muffled thud of footsteps reminded us time was not a friend. He found my eyes. There is a way, he said, voice raw but steadying as if he had rehearsed this in the dark 1,000 times. But it's not simple. It's messy. It will hurt. You should know that before you hope. Hope is a dangerous thing in places like this. It sharpens like glass. I swallowed hard and nodded. I would have walked into the ocean for him. I'd walk into hell if it meant pulling him free. There's a woman, he began. She used to work for them. Name's Eleni. She helped people get out once, then she disappeared. Everyone thought she was dead. I met her once, years ago. She saved me. When I ran the first time, she got me across a border. I owe her my life. My heart stumbled. Where is she now? He squeezed, his eyes closed, gathering himself. She's here. In the operation. She was taken back. Or she came back, I don't know which. But she's inside. She's an unlikely ally. She's one of the women who cleans the guest rooms for the big clients. She can move in and out. She taught herself the guard rotations. She hid a key for me once in a loose tile near the south vent. She left it there like a breadcrumb for any fool brave or stupid enough to follow. I pictured a small woman who might look fragile, but who carried the map of escape in her bone marrow. Eleni sounded like a myth. I wanted to believe in myths. How do you know she'll help now? I whispered. Because she helped me before, Jacob said simply. And because when I was left in the infirmary last month, she whispered instructions through the vents. She left me a note carved into the underside of a feeding tray. It said, if the boy ever returns with a woman, trust the blue stitch on your sleeve. A chill ran through my limbs. Blue stitch. In the apron of the cleaner. She always mends it with blue thread. She'll give us a plan if she thinks you're willing. He looked small and enormous at once. She told me what we need. One distraction during the evening shift change, a forged transport manifest, and a boat waiting at Pier 7 by dawn. She said the security codes are simple, arrogance and routine, but the locks on the south storage are mechanical and old. There's a tile that pops out. The key is hidden in a rusted seam behind it. He swallowed. Eleni can get the guard list for the night, but she wants something in return. I braced for money. For favors. For something terrible. I was ready for anything, but the truth that came out of his mouth made the floor tilt. She wants a face, he said. Not hers. Not mine. She wants the boss to see proof we'd rather die than betray each other. Proof that we won't turn. She wants you to be willing, in front of the boss, to refuse a deal they offer. Safety in exchange for spinning their lies. If you take the deal, if you choose your life over him, Eleni says the whole operation will tighten and the escape will never work. If you refuse, they'll be pushed to show mercy by angered clients and maybe, in the chaos, they'll expose routes they've kept secret for years. The words hit like a brand. You want me to refuse safety, I said. In front of him. To risk everything. Yes. Jacob's grip around the bar tightened until his knuckles blanched. It forces their hand. It makes them prove ownership in a way that riles their patrons. It creates noise and cracks their show of control. It gives Eleni leverage to move a man who otherwise would never be moved. It buys us a window. My stomach flipped. The price wasn't money. It wasn't a favor. It was my willingness to be seen as a martyr, to choose him loudly, stubbornly, for all the wrong reasons. It would make me a target. It would make me a spectacle. It would risk my life in public. My throat went dry. And if I say no? Jacob's face collapsed in a way that felt like grief. If you say no, they keep us. If you say yes, he closed his eyes. If you say yes, we have a chance at moving before dawn. He looked up, fierce now. You still with me? I tasted iron and fear and something thicker, the stubbornness of a woman who has loved and refuses to abandon the man she could not forget between heartbeat and breath. Yes, I said. The word was a small war cry. He nodded as if I had handed him a blade. Eleni will pass you a folded napkin when they bring food tonight. Inside will be the guard list and a pin with blue thread. Memorize it. Don't let them see you reading. When the boss offers the bargain, you refuse him in front of everyone. Let them humiliate you. Wait for the commotion. At the noise, Eleni will slide you the tile key. Jacob and I will force the infirmary door and get you out to the south storage. From there, you move to the docks. Pier 7. A boat will be there. If the plan works, it's dawn and we disappear. And if the plan doesn't work? My voice was thin. Jacob leaned forward until our faces were inches apart. Then we fight. Then we run. Then we love each other like it's the last thing that matters. But we try. I laughed then, a raw, high sound. It was insane. It was impossible. It was ours. Footsteps came down the corridor. The boss's boots. The key rattled in the lock outside our door. Jacob pressed his forehead to the steel. "Remember the blue stitch," he whispered. I closed my eyes and imprinted the plan on the inside of my skull like a prayer. The price was terrifying. But for the first time since waking on that cold concrete, terror and purpose braided together into something fierce. The lock turned. The door yawned open. They were coming. Scar Eyebrow entered first, Batten tapping his palm in a lazy rhythm that promised pain. Sunglasses Guy followed, crouching to unshackle my legs with a grin that made bile crawl up my throat. They hauled me upright by the chains on my wrists, my feet barely brushing the ground. I didn't look back at Jacob, because if I did, I might break. The hallway was a maze of cement and flickering lights, each step echoing the countdown that pulsed beneath my skin. They marched me past rooms with closed doors and muffled cries behind them, voices swallowed by walls, by fear, by silence. A metal elevator groaned as it carried us upward. When the doors opened, the stench changed: disinfectant, perfume, money. Rich men's secrets. Women's nightmares. We were in a different world now, above ground, but far from free. They led me into a room lined with glass and chrome. A chandelier gleamed overhead like a mocking crown. In the center stood a table, long, polished, set with untouched wine. The boss sat at the head. Behind him, a massive window overlooked the harbor. The ocean sprawled dark and endless, the lights of ships twinkling like promises of freedom. He gestured to an empty chair. "Sit." Sunglasses Guy shoved me into it. Scar clipped the chains to a metal ring drilled into the floor. I was restrained, but upright, displayed. The boss folded his hands like a professor preparing a lecture. "Anna," he said, my name curling smooth and venomous. "You love Jacob. This is obvious." I kept my gaze on the table's reflection, my face pale, eyes wild. "He has caused us problems before," he continued. "But until now, he knew his place. You changed that. You have become a liability." The word liability felt like a death sentence dressed in suits. "But," he said, eyes narrowing with calculated charm, "you can walk out of here alive." My pulse hammered. He nodded to Scar, who set a sleek black folder on the table and opened it in front of me. Inside were travel documents, a passport with my photo, a plane ticket, home. Home. Warm, ordinary home where monsters didn't rule the night. "All you must do," the boss said, leaning forward, "is tell me Jacob lied to you. Say you don't care what happens to him. Say you will return to your life and forget this ever occurred. Tell me you will not ruin a good business over one foolish boy." He slid a pen toward me. "That is what you want, yes? Safety. Freedom. Quiet." My lips parted, but no sound came. He misunderstood my silence as hesitation, the kind that leans toward surrender. He smiled. "You are young," he said. "You will forget his face by Christmas. There will be other men. Better ones. Uncomplicated ones. Take the gift." The guards waited, amused. Certain. Because why would anyone choose death over an escape route? Why would any woman choose to chain herself to a sinking ship? Why would any heart gamble everything on love? I lifted my eyes from the table. The pen trembled under my hand. But the words came steady, too steady. "No." The room stilled, like the air itself had flinched. The boss blinked. "Excuse me." I made my voice louder, clearer, for the walls, for Jacob somewhere below, for Eleni listening through vents and tiles. "No. I won't leave without him. You can't make me forget him." A muscle jumped in the boss's jaw. "You are very stupid," he murmured. Sunglasses Guy grabbed my hair, wrenching my head back. I gasped, but didn't break eye contact with the boss. He rose slowly, walking to my side with a predator's calm. He hooked a finger under my chin. "You think this is love," he whispered. "It is weakness. And weakness gets people killed. Better to die loving him," I rasped, "than live pretending he doesn't matter." It wasn't poetry. It wasn't brave. It was honest. That was worse to him. The boss released my chin and turned away, fury simmering in the stillness. "Make an example of her," he said. Scar cracked his knuckles. Sunglasses Guy laughed softly. Pain slammed into my ribs, a punch that tore the air from my lungs. My vision spotted white. Another hit to my shoulder. A knee to my stomach. The world shrank to fists and agony. But I didn't scream. Because screaming felt like giving them something. Somewhere behind the chaos, I heard it. A soft clatter. A hand brushing my fingers. Something small and sharp slipped into my palm, cold, metal, wrapped in cloth. The tile key. Eleni. She was here. I closed my fist around hope made solid. Scar raised his baton again, ready to snap bone, when a voice roared from the hallway. Enough. Jacob. He burst into the room, one arm bound to his chest, face a map of bruises, but alive, furious, unstoppable. A guard sprinted after him, too slow to catch the momentum of a man who had finally chosen to burn his cage to ashes. Jacob crashed into Sunglasses Guy, tackling him to the floor. The baton clattered from Scar's hand. Chairs toppled. Wine glasses shattered. The boss stumbled back, shocked control fracturing like glass. Chaos. My moment. My fingers clawed at the cuff chain, found the keyhole, metal grinding, trembling until... Click. The shackle snapped free. I lurched forward, legs numb but fueled by terror and love. Jacob roared as he slammed his elbow into a jaw. Eleni, a woman I barely glimpsed in a blur of apron and blue thread, yanked me toward the side door. Gunshots exploded, deafening, final sounding. A scream that wasn't mine, wasn't Jacob's, tore the air. Go! Jacob shouted, voice cracking. Eleni shoved me through the door and slammed it behind us, her body between me and bullets. We ran. We ran like freedom was a flame at our heels, like dawn was close enough to taste. And I didn't look back. Not yet. Because the only thing more terrifying than losing him was slowing down and letting the darkness swallow us both. But the hallways twisted like a nightmare, identical doors, sharp corners, stairs that led nowhere. Eleni gripped my wrist, pulling me with a speed and certainty fueled by years of planning an escape she never dared take. Gunshots echoed behind us. Shouts. Running boots. The world was collapsing in on itself. Keep low, she hissed as she shouldered open a service door. Cold night air slammed into us, sharp, metallic, tasting like the sea. We were outside. A loading dock stretched ahead, lit by a single buzzing floodlight. Shipping containers towered like rusted tombstones. For a heartbeat, I believed we'd made it. Then a bullet sparked off the metal beside my head. Run! Eleni yelled. We sprinted between containers, footsteps pounding wet concrete. My lungs burned. My vision blurred. Every breath scraped like fire. A guard rounded a corner ahead, gun raised. Eleni reacted first, tackling him with a fury born of years stolen. They crashed to the ground, struggling for the weapon. Go, she cried, voice breaking. Find Jacob. I'm not leaving you. She shoved me again, desperate. You survived because you found something to live for. Let me die knowing I helped protect it. Now go. Tears scorched my eyes, but I obeyed. I bolted deeper into the maze of steel, turning sharply until the gunshots behind me faded into distant thunder. Then, Anna. I skidded to a stop. Jacob limped from between containers, battered, breath ragged, one hand pressed to a bleeding shoulder, but alive. Relief burst in my chest so violently I nearly fell. I ran to him, catching him as his knees wavered. His arms locked around me, a desperate, shaking embrace that said everything we hadn't. You're okay, he whispered against my hair. So are you, I breathed. For a split second, one fragile heartbeat, the world softened. But headlights sliced through the mist. A black SUV barreled toward us. Jacob yanked me behind a container just as the vehicle screeched to a halt. Doors flung open. Shadows spilled out, armed and furious. We can't outrun all of them, Jacob whispered, panic threading his voice. The docks lead to the open pier. Nowhere to hide. I scanned the harbor, cranes, waves, ropes, and a fishing boat, engines idling, someone climbing aboard, a man turning like he heard our fear. Hope. A thin, flickering heartbeat of it. There. I pointed. Jacob nodded, jaw set. On 3. We tightened our grip on each other's hands. 1. Boots thundered closer. 2. A shout ripped the air. There. They're here. 3. We sprinted, legs screaming, hearts detonating inside us. Bullets chased our heels, pinging off metal, chewing into the concrete. The sea wind whipped tears from my eyes. The fishing boat engine roared louder, its captain motioning frantically for us to jump. Faster, Jacob urged, even as his steps faltered from blood loss. We reached the edge of the pier, a drop of meters into foaming black water below. The boat was shifting away, pulled by the tide. I squeezed his hand. I'm not letting go, I swore. Never, he rasped. Together, we leaped. Cold swallowed us, brutal, unforgiving. The ocean yanked us under, salt burning lungs and wounds. But Jacob's hand stayed welded to mine. We fought to the surface, gasping, waves slapping our faces, the shouts above warping into chaos. A spotlight swept the water, searching. The boat loomed closer, the captain hauling a rope toward us, yelling something lost to the wind. Jacob shoved me upward first, his strength a final act of devotion. I scrambled, arms lifted, reaching. Our fingers locked. Our eyes met. And in that suspended second, soaked, terrified, alive, I knew one truth with the force of a tidal wave. We would fight the world together. No matter what monsters tried to drag us back into the dark. Hands reached down and hauled us onto the deck. I collapsed on the wet boards, coughing up seawater as Jacob slumped beside me, shivering violently. The captain, a rugged older man with eyes hardened by the sea, shouted to someone below deck. Go! Full throttle, he barked. Engines roared. The boat surged forward, cutting through waves as bullets splashed into the water behind us. The dock lights shrank into distant flickers, angry stars swallowed by night. I crawled to Jacob, my fingers trembling as I checked his shoulder. Blood soaked through his thin shirt, staining my hands crimson. His breathing hitched sharp and uneven. He needs help, I gasped to the captain. He's losing too much blood. The man nodded once and guided us toward a small cabin. The warm orange glow inside felt like a miracle after so much cold. Stay here, he said gruffly. I will get the med kit. Jacob leaned back against the wall, eyes half-lidded but still fixed on me. Even in pain, he looked like he was afraid I might disappear. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered, voice cracking. I brushed wet hair from his forehead. I'll never leave you. Not after everything we've survived. He tried to smile, but it twisted into a grimace when pressure hit his wound. My heart twisted. I wanted to wrap him in every ounce of love and protection I had, but this wasn't over. Not yet. When the captain returned, he cleaned the wound with rough but capable hands. Jacob clenched his jaw, refusing to cry out. I held his hand tight, silently willing my strength into him. You were lucky, the captain grunted. The bullet passed through. But you will need a doctor soon. Why are you helping us? I asked. He paused, gaze lingering on the bruises marking Jacob's wrists. I have seen too many boys shipped off like cargo. It is a sickness of men with money. They think they own the world. Jacob swallowed. Thank you, he rasped. The captain nodded once, as if nothing more needed to be said, then returned to the wheel. Jacob's eyes fluttered shut. No, I said softly, patting his cheek. Stay awake. Talk to me. His lashes lifted slowly. You came for me. I never expected anyone would. You deserve to be saved, I murmured. You always did. A tear slid down his cheek, one he didn't have the strength to hide. I'm terrified, he admitted. Not of them. Not anymore. His gaze locked onto mine. I'm terrified that one day, you'll see what they made me and you'll leave. I cupped his face gently. I didn't fall in love with who they forced you to be, I told him. I fell in love with who you chose to stay. His breath caught a soft, broken sound, and his forehead pressed against mine. I love you, he whispered. The boat rocked, the sea wind roared, but the world went silent. I love you too, I breathed. And for the first time since arriving in Italy, I felt a fragile hope take root, small but unshakable. We weren't safe yet. The men who owned the docks wouldn't simply give up, but we were alive. Together. The captain shouted from the deck, snapping the moment like a delicate thread. Land in 10 minutes. Get ready. Jacob tried to stand swayed, and I caught him quickly. He leaned against me, his weight heavy but his spirit unbroken. "Wherever we go next," he said, gripping my hand, "we go as us." "As us," I echoed.